Hi, America here. Welcome to the next video. Today we're gonna talk about string tables. If you know what string table is and you just wonder about implementation in all the quirks about using string tables, and there are a few, I'm just gonna tell you right away, skip to the timestamp down below in the description or the comment section, and yeah, just fly to the implementation and continue from there. If you don't know what string table is and why you should use it and what does it give you, then feel free to stay. I'm gonna explain this all in this first part of the video. And I'm gonna just tell you right away, it's not gonna be a very quick video because there are a few things to talk about, so maybe a little bit longer, right? So let's start. What is a string table? A string table is basically an asset that holds text. So if you just worked with Unreal and there was a point in time where you thought about storing a text and you didn't really want to store it in any of the classes because, I mean, there is no reason for this to be in any specific class. And you didn't really want to use data assets because data assets, I mean, okay, it will work, sure, but maybe there is something a little bit more simple than that, okay? So just something for text and which doesn't really build a whole another class. And lucky for you, there is something like this, and it's called just string table. And the string table, as the name suggests, is a table of strings. But it's not really just strings. I mean, the strings are basically keys, and it also has a text attached to that string, right? Why do I say text and not string? Because string is not localizable and text is. And string tables are also called localization tables for some reason. So, they have to be sort of localizable for this to be called localization table. So let's just make a string table. Let's see how it looks, and then we'll go to how it behaves, right? So how do you find a string table? Well, the easiest way is to just type string table. And then you know that it's in miscellaneous. So when you go here, then it's also here, a string table. So when you make a string table, you can pick a fun prefix for that. I like to call them just st something. Maybe let's call it a test string table. But st also could mean state tree. So if you don't want these two to collide, then maybe you can come up with a better name, maybe strt, maybe something like that could work. So strt, but I mean, I'll just leave it st because it looks better. And when you open up a string table, you can see, hey, we have a key and we have a source string. And how do you add things? Well, you just type down below a key you want to add. So let's just type first key. And source string will be called just, first string. I'm gonna call it a string because this is called a string here. But it's not really a string, it's a text. So we add it. And, I mean, okay, it's sort of a string, sort of a text. I'll explain in a minute, okay? Yeah, this is it. Basically, you can export it to CSV and import from CSV if you wish, and just add as much text as you want. Let's type a second key, and let's type a second string. Let's add it, so we have 2. And now, all of that is basically a dictionary. So if you know dictionaries, They are basically hash maps, right? So it's very easy to get things out of this, and it's very easy to use, though it requires a little bit of work in some cases, but not too much work. It's just a few nodes, but it's more than one click, okay? And where should I go? Should I start with how you use this, or what do I mean by text? Let's just start with how do you use it, because it's super simple. When you have a widget, or actually any text in the whole game, you can just reference that string table. That is something that data asset cannot give you. I mean, you can get the data asset from some kind of blueprint, right? You can have a variable for that data asset, get that data asset, and just plug that in to the text. But with string tables, you can just click on text, and when you have that little button that is used for localization, then you have reference text, and you can pick your table. It will just set the text to your key, right? You have key, first key, and you have first string. And you will have a list of all the strings you'll see saved in the table. So, very nice, right? Yes, lovely. That is, well, the main use case of string tables. It's just a text that is stored and that you can reference in whatever text box you want. And it doesn't only work with widgets. You can do this right here, right? So, I mean, you have a text variable, you can do it here, and you can even do literal text and just do it here. First key, second key, and it auto sets to that value. Amazing stuff. And why do I say it's a text, not a string? Well, it's sort of a string here, it's called a string, right? But it's here, right? In text, it's not in a string. If you add a string, well, actually I didn't check that, so if I'm wrong, then don't hate me. That's tr, but I don't think it works. String. Yeah, I mean, you don't have a flag, you don't have any localization options, so there is no way for you to access that. You can access that only in text. And maybe we also would like to make a specific folder for string tables. Why would you want a specific folder for string tables? I'm just gonna tell you, we're gonna need that later. So make a folder for your string tables. Somewhere in the project, it can be in content, it can be in, nested somewhere. I'm just going to do this here. Also, if you reference an asset, then yeah, it won't save because it's referenced. It might not work then. Let's see. Oh, it still works. I guess it failed to save, but it updated the reference. I mean, good to know, right? So, moving on. Why is the string table called localized table or localization table? Because it's very easy to localize those strings. The second reason why I say it's not a string, it's a text, is because it works with localization dashboard, let's say. So if you go to your, where was that? I forgot, localization dashboard, and you do gather text. I'm not gonna go into localization, I'm just gonna tell you it works from here and basic stuff. If you want to learn localization, just go to another video about localization. In your localization dashboard, when you gather text, you can just gather text from those folders, right? It's another reason why you should use string tables, because you can reference text from those tables in any widget, any place you want, and when you localize the game, then you just pick a folder with string tables, and then you localize only those string tables. Super simple, and you don't need unnecessary stuff, or you don't gather unnecessary stuff. And what I like to do is when I go to string tables, I also like to make a folder for localizable, and actually duplicated the cube, non-localizable string tables, because when you localize stuff, well, you just need string tables that are localizable, and some string tables might not be localizable, or you just want these texts to act as strings purely and not as text. You don't want to localize it. So yeah, that's what I recommend. And now let's move on, because that was just basic stuff. And we have some advanced stuff coming up. So what do I mean by advanced stuff? Well, advanced stuff means not really referencing those string tables right in the text panel, but actually getting it out and using it in code. Because of course you can do that, but it requires a little bit of preparation. Because I mean, let's just talk about the example I have here. I made two widgets, so bestiary and bestiary entry, that will show in, well, player screen, which I add in player character. I just make a new bestiary widget, add it to viewport, and bestiary will sort of construct itself. And normally, when you make a bestiary or some kind of encyclopedia, you would be tempted to sort of make a map here, right? So it would be, how do you call it? Beast list, maybe it rhymes, and it will be, you know, string, map, text, and it could be, you know, not a string, it could be a name, and text could be a struct or whatever, right? And you can have some more options that way. But if you pick just name to text, then this thing basically does what string table does, right? And why, right? And you can use this list only in that blueprint. You can't reuse it in other places. Of course, you can also go to the game instance and add a list there, but then you sort of make your game instance larger, and maybe you don't need it to be loaded at all times. So, you know, it's not a perfect solution for every problem you will ever have, but it's a nice tool to know how it works and how to use. So instead of making a map here, we can just reference that string table. But the string table is not really a class that you can reference here. Because if you type string table, that nothing comes up. And that's because string tables are sort of different in how you access them. So how do you access a string table? Well, just type string table in the context browser. And what you want to do is, well, for our example, get keys from string table. And then that array is basically a list of keys from that string table. And then you can do for each. Actually, let's do this, because we are constructing bestiary entry widgets and it has text as input. So let's just do this and convert a source string to text, right? So for each key in that string table, we create a new bestiary entry and pass that key to the entry. And then whenever we take that widget, I mean, when it's clicked, then we get that key from that widget, and we then do string table entry source string. This requires, of course, the same table ID, and the key will be the text from that, right? So in text, this will be your key, just pass to key, and this will be your value. So when you have, let's make this a text as well, let's fill it, and it will be our beast description. You just set text, and this is your beast description, right? So pretty simple. Of course, this will not work because, I mean, it works, but it requires some hoops. It will be different in your implementation because you don't really create an entry that is sort of empty. It needs either an event that it's clicked, so you would go to, on a mouse button down, then make a new dispatcher on clicked, and then you drag this out, and on widget clicked, that will make an event, and then you get that text and do that. Or alternatively, you can get children, get all children, then for each. Actually, not for each, because yeah, there is no other way. You need to do it by a dispatcher, right? So this sort of needs to be a button, but we don't have time to make all of that in this video. Maybe I'm gonna stream someday, so I'm gonna do everything there. Let me know down in the comments below if you would like some streams from me. So we have this, but we are still missing table ID. And table ID is not just a string table name, right? So if you type st test string table, that will not work because this is not ID. And in ID, what you want to type is, well, you need to copy. I don't know if reference is going to work. Let's see. Literal text. I'll just see how it looks. Well, it sort of works, right? This is your ID, right? If you want a table ID, this is your ID. So basically game. I don't think it requires this, but maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Yeah. What you can do is, store this as name in this class, or you can store a list of table IDs in sort of game instance class, or maybe you want to make some sort of function in the function library that converts just a name to a whole path, right? Because you need a path to that table, and then you need that dot and then the table again. I don't know why it works like that, but it sort of needs to. So a quirk with that is that this table has to be loaded for this to work. And it's not loaded by default. I mean, it is loaded when you reference a value from that string table. So let's say you have that text and you use the previous method, so just select a string table. When you do that, the string table is loaded and will be loaded every time when you start an engine. But in this case, the string table is loaded only when you have that asset open. So when you open this asset, the string table is loaded, but when you restart the engine, the string table is no longer loaded. So how do you fix that? Well, you have to load the string table when the game starts. You can do that in game instance, you can do that in also player character, in game mode, in whatever. I'm just gonna do it in third person character because it's here, right? I don't need to search for it and it will work. So what do you want to do is get asset registry. Now you get assets by class and you see that you need a class path name. That's very easy to get. You just get class path name, that top level asset path, and select the class string table. Lovely. Now you have every asset of that class. And how do you load it? Well, it's not, there is no function for it to load. Like, there is no explicit function for it to load, but we can get around that. I'm just gonna show you right away. We get all of those assets and you see there is no really load, and we have is asset loaded, but that doesn't really load the asset. What you want to do is get asset. And we get asset, you can see in the description that it returns the asset UObject if it is loaded, or loads the asset if it is unloaded, then returns the result. And this node, of course, has to be used for the asset to be loaded. So you just do a valid, or if you use another node that just do something with that object, it will also be loaded. But for just a simple asset loading, you can do this. And probably, it's a quick tip, it will work with other assets if you wish. You can also load assets a different way using primary asset ID, but this string table is not a primary asset, so it will not work in this case. So now you have your string tables loaded at the start. So whenever you have your widget and want to access all of those keys and source strings, it will work just fine. But you thought there is no other buts, but there is. But it will not work in shipping or any kind of build, and you still need to fix that. So let's go to project settings. And in project settings, you need to go to packaging. And in packaging, where is it? Is it in packaging? Yes, I think it is. But is it right here? I need to read. Non-asset directories. Oh, this is this. Additional asset directories to cook. You basically need to type in your folder with string tables. So this. And now, I don't know why string tables are not cooked by default and are not included in your build, but well, it is not. And you have to go here and explicitly state that string tables, or just every asset from that folder, and we conveniently selected string tables, or made a string tables folder. Every asset from that folder needs to be included in the build. And we have all of that preparation. You are good to go and to use string tables. And I think, even though it requires some work for it to be working perfectly, I still think it's useful and it has, use cases, right? Especially in sort of encyclopedia bestiary situations where every beast has some sort of unique name. and it will just have a description. And if that, okay, one quirk, one other quirk, you can't use spaces in the key, because if you want to make third key, you see name may not contain white space characters. And that might be problem for some of you that want, you know, those names to have spaces. But the very easy solution for that is to just use another character that you can swap, right? So if you use underscore, then when you get that key and you want to display it, maybe we can even do it here. You just convert it to string, or even better, you can do in text, which is a string, and then, you know, this is just a key. And then in the entry, you can replace every occurrence of that underscore to space. Very easy to sort of regulate how the key is displayed. And you might be worried that in the string, well, in the string here, you only have one sort of field to work with. And that is also not a very big problem if you know how to process strings, because, I mean, it is a string, and maybe that this has a few different fields that, you know, some you want to show, some you don't want to show. And you just do, you know, like first section. This is going to be a second section. And you make a separator. So it could also be an underscore. It could be this. It could be even double signs. And when you want to separate this section into two, I just get text, parse, and do whatever you know placed here as a separator. And this is your delimiter. And then you have array of two sections in that string. So it looks limiting at first glance, but actually it's not really that limiting if the info in the string table is not needed to be changed. Okay? If you need that data to be changed and dynamic and so on and so on, of course, string tables are not meant for this case. Then you need to use something else. But for a big chunk of cases, actually, string tables are very fine choice. And you can't localize keys. So that's also a consideration, right? But you can localize the content of that key, let's say. So yeah, string tables are cool, string tables are useful. They are not for every use case, but you definitely should keep them in mind when you make your projects. Because if you even don't really have a need to use them in your projects, you can just use them as a notepad and just, you know, write your notes here. And maybe you don't need to use a text. Maybe you want to share your notes with other people on the project, and you just say, okay, we use that string table for notes and for stuff, or some kind of tips and tricks on how to do these things in our project. And string table is a viable option for that. Why not? So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. I went a little bit in depth in that video, but I hope it wasn't too long and boring. Give a like, give us up, comment down below, of course. What do you think about string tables? And see you next time, which might be in a month, might be in a in a week. I don't know. Whenever I will have an interesting topic to talk about. See you next time. Bye bye.